Today I'm going to be doing a demonstration using colored pencil on sanded paper for flowers and blending them with powder blender. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. Today is part one of this portrait that I am working on. I am going to be walking you through the flowers. I am working with polychromos colored pencils on Fisher 400 sanded paper. This is mounted to a board, so I don't have to have it taped to anything, which is nice. And what you're seeing behind me isn't done, so I should actually probably cover it more. I don't even have the flowers finished yet. It'll be done by the end of the video though. If you are supporters over on Patreon, the 2-hour version of this tutorial is available for you now, complete with voiceover and some real-time clips, so make sure to head over and check that out. And now onto this tutorial. I'm going to start off with the background on this one. I'm using this sort of magenta brick red mixture. I'm going back and forth between those two shades actually. As I draw this on here, you can see that I'm holding my pencil to the side. I am being super messy, very, very scribbly on this. That thing I'm usually telling you guys, don't scribble, watch which direction your pencil's going. I'm doing the opposite here. When you blend with powder blender, it's going to blend all of this out. Now the big tip I have for you is do not push hard with your pencil. If you push very hard with the pencil to start out with, I'm not so much worried about damaging the tooth of the paper like I normally would be. You've got your texture fixative spray that will fix that. The problem is if you push too hard, then the powder blender is not going to work as well. It can't really blend it out if you have really burnished that pencil into the paper. Once I went ahead and got the coverage that I wanted for my first layer, I'm going to use a soft sponge blending tool and a little teeny tiny bit of the powder blender, a little bit goes a long way, and blending that out. I then sprayed it with my texture fixative, let it dry completely, and then repeated the process. And as I go, I can add more colors. This time I'm adding a very, very dark blue into the magenta. Going to go ahead and blend that out. Once I get that all blended, I will spray it with the texture fixative, let it dry completely. I would say a minimum of 10 minutes, but it depends on your weather. It's going to depend on a few factors. If you don't let it dry all the way, it can cause some of the areas to flake up when you put your next layer. Then when I say that, it's tiny little dots. It's not a big deal. If it happens, not the end of the world. It will be completely covered when you layer over it. So it doesn't really make that big of a difference if you realize, oh my gosh, I didn't wait long enough. It's okay. It's not going to ruin anything. So I'm going to repeat this process until I get it as dark as I want. I'm slowly building into that darker color. One of the mistakes I made early on with using the powder blender is I was trying to get my darks really, really dark right off the bat. And I find that it looks a lot better and it works better if you do this a bit slower. Just build up, use your texture spray, spray it. And you can repeat this process as many times as you need to get the color saturation to be exactly where you want it. So it just works really, really nice because you are unlimited on how many layers you can do. Onto the flowers. For this video, I'm going to be doing this in 2 stages. I'm going to do my first layer, block in all of the colors. I'm basically looking at this as a sort of underpainting. I don't need anything to be perfect. I just want the general idea of where my lights and darks go, my general shades. I can adjust that later as I need to. Now this first run through, I'm not going to be spraying the texture fixative. I will spray that after I block in everything. You can do it in smaller sections if you prefer. For me, I thought it'd be easier just to do it kind of all in sections together. So again, just blocking those shapes out. Now anytime, no matter what medium you're working in, when you're painting or drawing flowers, look at them in terms of abstract shapes. Don't try to look at it so much as I'm drawing this sort of flower. It makes it a little bit hard to keep your place, and a lot of times things will look weird. You'll feel like, I don't think I should go this dark, this shadow doesn't look right. But if you look at it as abstract shapes, copy the shapes that you see in your reference photo. When you back away, it all comes together and it looks beautiful. But it can be a little bit overwhelming as you're working if you're trying to just make it look like a flower. I'm making quotations, but you can't see that. But if you're going for realism, if you're really trying to make things look very, very realistic, getting in the habit of looking at the shapes, looking at the values, the lights, the darks, that is going to help you to make things look much, much more realistic if you can break it down into the smaller components like that. Now the great thing here, if I do something that I absolutely hate, it'll erase. It's not a big deal. Once I spray the texture fixative, that layer won't erase. But anything that I'm doing here, if something came out and looked absolutely terrible, well, more terrible than it should for this stage, I should say. Let's say I put a flower in the wrong place or I used completely the wrong color. You can erase it. So that is really nice. If you've not worked on sanded paper, it is a nice paper to work on. Even if you're not using powder blender, it is just a really cool paper. You get very, very different results than you do with some of the smoother papers. And I didn't think I was going to like working on sanded paper. I was very, very surprised. The more I use it, the more I love working on this. And you can use odorless mineral spirit both on this paper and in combination with the powder blender. And I do that. You'll see that in next week's video. I did that a little bit on these flowers later on. Again, not in this video. That will be coming, but it does work together very well. You can combine them if you like. So we'll speed this up a little bit. Again, just blocking this in. The sponge blender that I'm using here is the one that came in my brush and pencil set. It was a whole kit with the powder blender, the texture fixative, the final fixative. Everything was just kind of included in this one, and those are the little blenders you're seeing me use here. Now, after I finished this portion of the piece, I realized I bet the soft company, the one that makes the bigger, the brush, the knife that you saw me using early on, I bet they make some different shapes. And it turned out they did. I was really excited to find out about that, and I'll put a link to the ones that I purchased in the video description. I got mine from Amazon. And you can use a triangle tip that gives you great coverage or great control when you're trying to get the tiny areas. I'm really liking the rounded, more oval tipped knives. So those are really handy, and you'll see that later on in the next section of flowers. Now, one thing that I have found with working with the powder blender and this, I'm loving drawing roses. Look how I'm just getting my basic color there, basic, the kind of peach, and then blending into the yellows. I could do that with any color, just get kind of a mid-range. Then I'm coming on top with my white, this is the white polychromos, and lining in where the highlights of those roses are. Then I come back through with my my darker tones, my shadows. And it is just the easiest way I think I have ever drawn flowers, and I love the results. Now these ones again aren't finished. I'm going to do more layers on top of them, but this for a base layer, just blocking in my colors, it really went very, very quickly. Now this is a large piece, 16 by 20. That's typically going to take forever to complete with colored pencil. But doing this method, the way that I'm able to just block in the base color, come on top with my white, you can see I'm blending that out there. I will come on top with white. Actually, I think on this one I did some of my darks first, but then realized that it worked better if I did the white and then came back through with the darks. I'm always experimenting to try to see what's going to work best for me. But when I came back through with those whites, it just showed up so well, and it made it really easy for me to control which petal was which. Now, as I'm drawing these flowers, the reference photo for this one comes from Graphic Stock. You can look it up there. I am not drawing quite as many petals as what's in the photo, and I don't think that it matters. Here, it made it easier for me to go ahead and cut down quite a few of those petals, but they still look like roses. I still liked the end result, but it saved me time from having to sit there and do every teeny, teeny, tiny one. What I do when I draw roses is basically very similar to how I draw fur or hair. Go for close. I'm copying the general shape. I'm curving each petal around the rose as it is in the photo. I'm making sure that the length and the direction and all of that is right, but I don't necessarily draw each petal exactly as the photo. I just need to basically build that texture or the look. It's almost kind of, I feel like doing a faux finish where when you look closely between this and the reference, you can see, okay, yeah, it's not exact. But when, I mean, the viewers really normally, you guys can, but normally no one's going to see that reference photo. They're not going to know that I skipped out on quite a few of those petals. It's kind of a nice thing with drawing flowers. It's one of the reasons that I will often start beginners. If you're new to a medium, draw some roses. You've got enough detail that you can really get the hang of controlling that medium, of blending, of all of those details, but you're not as worried. It's not going to be as frustrating if something was a little bit off. Like, I never start students with portraits, because if something's a little off, it can be a little bit discouraging. Actually, it can be very discouraging when it doesn't look like the person it's supposed to. If you can start with something like a rose or a flower where you're getting the hang of all of those things I mentioned before, the blending, the details, the shading, that sort of thing, it's a lot more forgiving, because again, if it's a little off, no one's going to know the difference. Like here, I didn't bother to try to make it exact, and no one's going to know the difference, except for everyone watching this video who can look up the actual reference. Another thing that I'm really liking with working on this sanded paper, look how great the colored pencil covered the dark areas. Now, those dark areas were sprayed, so it's not completely blending into the colors that I'm laying down, but those top eucalyptus leaves that I just did, those ones, I put the green right on top of the black and it completely showed up just like if I were painting. If I were doing that with colored pencil normally, it wouldn't have shown up almost at all. You wouldn't have seen much. So onto this rose, just like before, I started by blocking in that base, just medium rose tone. Now I'm coming back through with the white, just defining approximately where those petals are going to go. And this is another one. I copied the general direction based on the reference photo, but not every single individual petal. Here I'm using this darker pink, and I'm going to come back through with some oranges, which I find that if you mix the orange with the pink, you get almost this glowy look. It just adds to the depth of that flower. I really like that look. Then coming through with this deeper magenta as well, I softly blended that out with powder blender just to smooth my edges a bit. Now don't feel like you have to blend every single thing with powder blender when you're using it. If something looks better, how you blended it with a pencil, that's fine. Leave it as it is. Don't think that every single thing has to be touched with powder blender. It doesn't. Use it for the areas that you need it on, but don't feel like you have to overdo that. And blocking in these eucalyptus leaves. Now with the leaves, I found it worked better just to really loosely block those in. When I tried to do a lot of detail, I was just making a mess. So I'm just going to leave those alone, and then when I spray them, I will come back through and get the details that I want there. These yellow roses were really, they went through so fast, just getting that base layer and then coming on top with the white. Now, a big tip I will give you if you are drawing yellow roses, really with any flowers in general, I don't recommend using a lot of black. The darker pink flowers, I do have black there on the deepest shadows, but the majority of the shading that I did with those was with the darker magentas and reds and purples and blues and all of these other colors. With the black, don't go overboard on that. And any time that I paint something that's yellow, I will almost never use black to shade with it because you end up with a really ugly muddy color. There are going to be rare cases where it would be best to do that, but it's rare. So on those yellow flowers, the deeper, darker shades, I used the dark burgundy colors, a little bit of brown, some purples, but the darker pencils, but not black. And I know I'll get someone saying, oh, you should never use black. I like black. I like black a lot, but there's certain times that I think that it doesn't work as good as or look as good as another color. And I never leave black all on its own. I'm always going to mix another color in with it to keep it from looking very flat. And these flowers were done in the exact same way as the previous ones, blocked in a base layer, then came on top with the white, then the deeper pinks and my darker colors, blending those out. And it's great because there are areas on that I was like, wow, that looked terrible when I looked at it later. It doesn't matter. I've now sprayed it, all of that, with my texture fixative, let it dry completely, and I can come on and clean up my details and fix stuff. If I don't like something, I can completely change it. It's very much like painting in that you have so much more control. It's very forgiving. Whereas normally when you work in colored pencil, if you were blending with odorless mineral spirits or just blending by layering, you have to really plan everything out to begin with, because if something goes wrong, it's not going to be an easy thing to fix. Here, I can fix and redo anything. I could completely take one of these flowers out and change it to another color. I could put a bird in there over what I've already done, and it would work really well with this medium. You can see just refining things. Now this time through, my pencils are quite a bit more sharp than they were the previous time through. And I'm still just using the polychromos. I probably will use a few Caran d'Ache for my final layers, the more opaque layers that won't need to be blended with powder blender. But anywhere that I know I'm probably going to use the powder blender, I'm going to avoid my wax pencils. I just don't think they work really well with this. The oil-based polychromos are perfect. But again, for your final layers, the details that don't need to be blended out, then go ahead and switch over to your wax-based if you need something especially to be more opaque. So going through here and just cleaning up details. And when I say that I'm cleaning up details, what I really mean is I'm sharpening my edges. Right now, whenever I do my first layers, everything's quite fuzzy. I want everything to be very sharp, very clean in this area. And so I've got to come back through with a very sharp pencil to clean that up. And even this layer, what you're going to see in this video, I had mentioned that before, I'm going to come back through and clean it up even further, but I'm going to wait until after I've drawn the portrait portion so that I know which colors I want to balance everything out with. Right now, everything's very bright and pink. I'm definitely going to pull some of the more reddish brown tones and orange tones into this, but I want to wait till the girl is drawn so that I can balance those colors. And I was really happy with how see, it's like spoiler alert, I'm talking about next week's video, but I was really happy with how this worked with the odorless mineral spirits for cleaning up edges, just sharpening them even more. I found I got sharper edges that way than I did with the pencils alone. And that was just reworking an area that I had already worked in colored pencil. Just what I have here, I came back and just cleaned those up. This flower here, that white one, you can really see where I went through with the edges and the white pencil and sharpened those edges. Made it really stand out more. So this next section we're going to move through much more quickly because it's just a rinse and repeat of what we've already seen. And you can see most of what is already done right here on the live stream. I will have a card pop up so you can check that out. Last week's live stream we did this in real time, and this is just the first layer. I will, just like I did the flowers above, once I get all of these flowers blocked in, I'm going to spray it with the texture fixative and then come back on top with finer details. Now if you're using the texture fixative and you are having a problem with it spraying like kind of a splatter, you're getting these heavy droplets, two things. One, don't freak out. You did not ruin anything. When it dries completely, you'll just blend over it. You'll never know that that happened, that you had those splatters. So it doesn't really matter when it does happen. But you can avoid that by making sure that you shake your can really, 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 really well before you use it, and pull the nozzle off every so often. Usually once a day, if I'm spraying with it every day or working with it every day, once a day at least, I will pull the nozzle off the can and soak it in hot water. This will unclog it. I dry it completely and then stick it back on the can, and this will help you to avoid having those heavier splatters. But like I said, when it happens, it is not the end of the world. You did not ruin anything. It's totally okay. I have it happen all the time because I got too lazy to get up and clean my nozzle off. These roses are being done exactly like the previous ones. Started with that mid-range tone, came on top with the white, and then now coming in between with these darker portions. And it's just so easy. I was so excited when I did this to realize how easy you can draw roses. I mean, normally that's something that would have taken me so long to do in any medium. Even graphite, which is typically fast. This was just, it was fun to work on because it was almost instant gratification. Each rose only took, I don't know how long, I would say less than 20 minutes, which is really fast for something like that, and especially this size. Going to lay in my darker section here. Now this flower I'm doing a little bit different. I'm going to come around those edges and brighten them up. Blocking in the yellow flower, and by the end of this video that flower is still getting on my nerves. I'm going to be adjusting a lot on that guy once I get the portrait portion done in, and I've got to wait till her arm is done so that I can overlap the rose on top of her arm. Right now it's just not looking so good. So onto the eucalyptus, I am blocking in my green tones here and just lightly shading that. I'm going to need to spray those before I really can get much of the detail in. For the white flower, I'm using a lot of the pinks and grays. I don't want to just draw it in or shade it in with solid white. You want to keep your white colors, the brightest whites, for your highlights. So even though, yeah, those are white petals, if I just draw them white, they're going to look very flat. I've got to use a lot of the colors around them. So here I've got those pinks and those grays. I've shaded that, and then I can come back in through with the brighter whites just for the highlights. But I've got to make sure my shadows are dark enough in order for those highlights to stand out. So I went ahead and sprayed all of this, let it dry completely, and now I'm on to the second layer here. And now I'm worrying about the actual highlights, making sure everything's exactly where it goes. I've got the base layer. I'm no longer fighting the white, or in this case, that kind of cream color of the paper. And I'm making sure that those shadows, you can see how I've got a little bit of a shadow underneath every row of the eucalyptus, and then it brightens up. Paying attention to little details like that will make a big difference in your work looking realistic. It's easy to think, okay, I'm drawing a highlight. I'm just going to draw a straight highlight all the way down for that stem. And you lose your shadows. Make sure that you keep your shadows in there. Watch for that sort of thing. Just look very closely at your reference photo. And if you're looking at that and thinking, well, how would you even notice that? When I'm drawing, I don't notice those things. That comes with time and practice. Don't kick yourself or think, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be good at this. I don't notice those things. You will. The more you draw, the more you're going to start noticing. I remember thinking that years ago when I would draw things and I would see something someone else drew that was really realistic, and I'm thinking, how did they even notice that little detail? It really does come with time and practice. So here, the same as before, where I'm just cleaning up those edges. And when you're working on the sanded paper, or even if you're using gessoed paper, which is your other option when blending with the powder blender, or working with the powder blender, I should say, when you're working with that, it's going to take a few layers to smooth things out. Your first few layers are going to feel very fuzzy, like your edges aren't very sharp, they're not very clean. That is normal. You're just going to keep layering until you get them very smooth. It's not that because this paper is rougher, you're going to end up with rougher results. When I started working with this paper, my thought was this is going to be similar to working with cold pressed watercolor paper that has a lot of tooth, a lot of texture. I'm not going to like this. I'm not going to be able to get it smooth. It's very different. And when I first started, I was kind of, it's okay. The more I have used this, I am loving this paper. And this one is the Fisher 400, which it's definitely my favorite of all of the sanded papers that I've tried. And I've only tried a couple, the UArt 500, this one, and I think one other that I can't remember the name of. But this one is definitely my favorite with how smooth it is. You get just such even, smooth surface to work on. Again, the UArt paper that I used, part of why it wasn't even is I had a defective batch. But even then, the newer one, this is just so nice to work on. In comparison, I should say. My podcast co-host for the Colored Pencil podcast, he recently did a portrait. He did not use powder blender, but he did a portrait on sanded paper, and it was beautiful. Not what I ever would have thought you could do with colored pencil on a paper with that kind of tooth. The results that you get when working this way, it's similar, the look anyway, I think, is very similar to what you get with pastels, but without the mess of pastels. You do have some pencil kind of dust that comes off, but nothing like you would experience with pastels. So I will, in between layers, you will, like on the live stream, you probably see me blowing on my work to blow the excess away, but it's not that much. Nothing compared to what you would get with pastels, which is a big thing for me because I don't like how the pastels, they're very messy. I don't like how they feel on my hands. So this lets me do something that gets the results very similar very quickly, like pastels, but without so much mess or the grainy gritty feel on my hands. Working through here just like before, just cleaning up my edges. This is before I realized I was going to use the paint thinner, and I think if I were to do the same exact thing again, I probably would have been using the paint thinner in combination at this stage because I really did like how it cleaned everything up. Now, when I come through with these darker colors, notice that I'm not just throwing lines everywhere. I'm not outlining everything with the dark. I'm picking for the darkest portions, the deepest portion of the rose. I'm doing a little bit here and there, and then it goes right back up. It fades up into the lighter areas. If I just line all of those shadows with the darkest colors, it just looks like lines. It's not going to look like a rose where portions are deeper than others. In order to get that three-dimensional look, it's very important that you have the variation of the way that the dark fades into the light. Adding more of my highlights now on those white petals. And that is it for this stage. I will continue to do a little bit of changes here and there as I'm working just in building this up once I get the girl drawn in. I will have a link in the video description if you want to join me tonight. If you're watching this the day it goes live at 8 p.m. Central Time, I'm going to be live streaming drawing the hair, the last chunk of the hair on this portrait. So if you want to see how I'm going to layer and which colors that I'm using for the red hair, definitely join tonight. Again, that link will be in the video description. If you are watching this video any other time, that link will still work. You'll just be watching a replay of it. If you missed last week's live stream of the flowers, you also missed the baby chicken. So I thought I'd bring him out so you guys could visit with him. Hi, baby shoulder chicken. You want to talk to everybody? I've been working to teach him the Harry Potter song to whistle, but accidentally once played the Addams Family one and he got super excited, so it looks like that's the one he's working on right now. Although he's been singing something that kind of sounds like the Mexican hat dance, and I have no idea where he got that from. He's missing like the last two notes on that, so we don't know where he came up with that. Your broken tail really makes you look like a chicken now. You may not be a flamingo, but you're pretty close. A flamingo wouldn't fit on my shoulder. You may be better. Aww, chicken head scratches. Such a sweet baby bird. Thanks for watching. If you are new to my channel, there's a button right there that you can hit to subscribe to keep up to date on all 5 of my new art videos every single week, including live streams that are sometimes visited by chickens.